Well, buckle up as a growing signal for a tropical storm off the southeast coastline with potential impacts to the United States later this week. Welcome in, folks. Great to see you on this Tuesday, September 23rd. And I'd say this is the highest chance we've had of potential impacts in the United States this hurricane season so far in any meaningful way. And we're going to need to track this all week long. And obviously, I'm going to have all the details for you that we have right now in today's video. But really, this is one that's going to evolve, I think, throughout the week. So you're going to want to stay tuned to the forecast and how it will likely shift back and forth multiple ways. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Gerald. I'm a meteorologist at WCCB Charlotte. If you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications so you're always up to date here with the latest info here on the GM Weather YouTube channel. And yeah, this is all me on this channel. It's not run by anybody else, just me. So, free to say what I would like, and I'll always give you the information that I think is the most likely, and always breaking down that model guidance in a nice, fun, meteorological way. All right, let's go ahead and just dive right on into it, folks, because again, a lot to talk about. I've got my cup of coffee here with me this morning, and we're going to break down multiple areas of investigation in the Atlantic, starting with the loop next to me. This is the morning run of the European model, and the morning run and the evening run of the Euro only go out about 5 days or so compared to the afternoon and overnight runs, which go, 10 days out. Actually, I think even longer now that I think about it. But either way, really, that 10-day period is all you can really use as a reliable range. But notice what's happening on the latest run right off the southeast coastline here. We've got double trouble brewing, and that's been a theme in a lot of model guidance since we last talked yesterday, increasing the threat here of tropical development. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, you'll remember that we had multiple areas that kind of had the chance to develop, and you could see that we still do. In fact, we also have Hurricane Gabrielle. I'm going to stop the loop right here on the most latest frame for a second, just so we don't have that flashing purple bar at the bottom because of some missing data. But either way, let's just pause here and point out what we have. This is Hurricane Gabrielle. That one now running into wind shear, going to run into colder waters, and eventually going to get shot off towards Europe. We're really not going to talk about that one in depth in today's video. This is what we are talking about. We have two new invests, 93L and 94L. This one is 93L, as long as my memory serves me correctly, and this one 94. Either way, the name doesn't really matter. The point is, both of them are areas of investigation by the National Hurricane Center. And honestly, folks, both of them looking very healthy this morning. In fact, I'll be honest, the leading wave here looks a lot better than I expected to see it waking up this morning. You could see pretty good outflow or divergence here in the upper levels from this one. And definitely starting to get kind of that shrimpy look to it, or that cyclonic flow look. And that's obviously something you want to watch for, as it's already working into the Antilles, bringing plenty of rain, but not really bringing any other tropical impacts outside of that rain. Not really seeing any tropical storm force winds or anything, as again, it isn't fully developed yet, but looking impressive. The one behind it also not looking half bad. I'll keep looping it again just so we can kind of see. The one behind it doing a better job right now of showing that cyclonic spin. The one in front, again, getting some upper level divergence, helping to fan it out, but still struggling to show a well-defined spin. And then obviously Gabrielle spinning away up here, and like I mentioned, moving on out. So a lot better looking on satellite today. Obviously, like I mentioned, still not at named storm status, but yeah, it's the trend you don't really want to see with these systems. And because of that, the National Hurricane Center, again, going ahead and deciding that we'll designate these as areas of investigation, which I completely agree with. I'll briefly show you Gabrielle. That's this track up here where it says H4 did hit Category 4 status. Kind of a funny little tidbit. We've had two hurricanes this season, only two so far. Everything else has been a tropical storm or depression, and both of them have hit Category 4 or 5 status. So it's been kind of an all or nothing hurricane season. But remember, we've yet to see really any direct impacts to the United States out of any storms. We had Chantal work on through, and we've had some other little things, but no hurricanes so far this season. Will that change? Yeah, it's possible. But back to Gabrielle, again, going to move out into the open Atlantic and weaken, likely getting just north of most of the Azores here, but it will still be a Category 1 status then, although probably more post-tropical than anything. And then now check it out, yeah, portions of Spain and Portugal in the cone of uncertainty, but by that point, the storm becoming weaker. Could be interesting for folks out in Europe, though. All right, the other two areas, again, these areas of investigation in red, a 90% chance here for Invest 93. So I think I got the names right earlier. And then a 60% chance for Invest 94. So both of those getting bumped up. And you'll notice 94, a closer track to the United States, generally speaking, on when it is likely to develop. All right, that's a brief overview. Let's start to dive on into this a little bit more piece by piece and start picking out some model data. All right, let's talk about a couple other things here to note. We'll start with the vorticity map, and this is a low-level spin in the atmosphere. So obviously, for a tropical system, you need it to be spinning to ever get anywhere. And the brighter the colors, the more spin there is. So obviously, right here where Gabrielle is, there's a ton of spin out there. It's a well-defined hurricane. Very easy to see that positive vorticity, as is indicative of a tropical cyclone here in the northern hemisphere. Down south, here's 94L and here's 93L. 93L, like I mentioned, looking a little bit better here on the vorticity map, but 94L starting to catch up. There was basically no spin with 94L yesterday. Now, again, starting to see some of these more yellowish colors. Probably won't get to tropical system status till you get more into these upper oranges and reds on the key there on the right side of the screen. But either way, again, looking more impressive than it did yesterday, which is obviously not something you want to see when something is tracking generally towards the United States. Now, a whole nother part of this, I'll show you this map first. These are sea surface temperatures, and you need sea surface temperatures generally above about 26 or so degrees Celsius to support a tropical system, and we're well above that, folks. We're running about 29, 30 degrees Celsius. That's mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit. Just almost explosive levels here for potential growth. These were the same waters that Gabrielle went over whenever she became a major hurricane. So obviously warm enough to support higher in echelon tropical systems right where these are going to track. Again, kind of in this general area is where both of these systems will be going. I know it's a big circle. Don't worry, we'll narrow that down here more in a second, but you get the idea. Plenty of warm water ahead. Not only is that warm water there at the surface of the ocean, it also goes quite deep. We're talking about 75 to 100 plus meters down below from the surface of the sea. Again, that is more than deep enough to promote rapid intensification of any sort of system that may get into this region. Although I'll warn you, rapid intensification cannot occur until a system already has a well-defined course. So we're a ways away from having to deal with that right now, but just looking on down the road could be something we need to watch as both of these systems track over very warm and deep warm water at that. All right, let's dive into model data. That's what I'm sure many of you have been waiting on, and we've got some pretty crazy runs to show you, but again, per usual, I'll be giving it to you with context as to the likelihood of it happening. I'll immediately start with this. Because we have two waves so close to each other, it's going to be a tricky forecast all around. Does just one wave develop? Do both of them develop separately? Do they kind of combine into one wave and develop that way? Well, our models kind of show every possible scenario, but I will say the odds have definitely increased that we get the wave closer to the United States, 94L, to develop into a named storm. So, we will see that here on the model data. We'll start right with the GFS, the morning run of the GFS. Let's move it ahead into time. This is a pressure map, so I think this map is one of the easier ones to look at. It's not quite as messy. It's pretty simple. If you see very tight areas of dark blue, that's low pressure developing. You'll even see the little L pop up with a number under it, being the millibar surface pressure that the model is predicting. Now, the models are never always perfectly right, so again, we're using this as guidance and not a forecast. All right, here's the GFS by Saturday afternoon. So again, today's Tuesday. We've got some time to go. Here's the northern one that is 94L or 93L, excuse me. This one being 94L down near the Bahamas. And notice they're kind of getting intertangled a little bit, almost sharing the same pressure field. But eventually, it kind of breaks apart and the GFS takes the other wave, 94L, develops it into a tropical storm and eventually a hurricane, gets it out near Bermuda, and it's not really a problem for much of anybody, then kind of meanders around in a weird path out there. So the GFS actually, not that big of a deal. The other models, though, now kind of flipping with the GFS and showing something a little more impactful. Here's the overnight European run, and I'll show it to you. And you can see immediately here this is Thursday evening into Friday, the waves are much more separated, not nearly as connected. And because of that, having an easier time developing on their own and getting to tropical storm status probably by the start of the weekend, both of them here. Here's Friday morning. I call that two separate tropical storms, one on the right, one on the left. Again, one right over the Bahamas. Either way would be bringing heavy rain. The other one just kind of out to sea. Eventually, you move it ahead into time, and the Europeans got a landfalling tropical system into North Carolina by next Monday. That's less than a week from now, so we're not talking about la la land. And, it's a weak one on the overnight run, but I showed you this morning European run. Obviously, doesn't go out as far as this, but showing a stronger system, maybe a mid-grade to stronger tropical storm approaching the Carolinas by early next week. And then the other storm right behind it being a hurricane and kind of pulling up near Bermuda. And again, kind of more similar to the GFS run with that system, but different with the not homegrown system because it's originating somewhere else, but the closer to home system. How about that? All right, the Canadian model, what does it show? Can be useful sometimes. It's always good to check other data. Well, it's a lot more similar to the European. It's got two separate storms. We've got the hurricane further out. We've got the tropical storm closer to Florida and the Bahamas here by Friday, Saturday. And then the Canadian kind of gets them a little bit close, almost does some Fujiwara action, but either way pulls them both back out to sea and wouldn't be that big of a deal for the Southeast, at least in terms of direct impacts. But a little bit later on, I'll show you, even without direct impacts, this could be a tough forecast, and we'll get that closer to the end of the video. But here's another one. This is the European AI model. This one did some kind of funky stuff, but I'll be honest with you, I kind of buy it a little bit, and I'll tell you why. So here we go. This is the Euro AI. This is by Friday afternoon, and you'll notice we've got, again, the two separate waves, but notice there's a key difference. The location of everything has kind of shifted westbound towards the United States a little bit, and especially 93L here, or 94L. Sorry, I'm going to keep getting the names mixed up. Either way, the one I have circled here with the L in it. How about that? It's further west, and honestly, given the current data, I mean, the wave looks to be over the Antilles right now. I wouldn't be surprised if it kind of does something like this. Maybe gets ripped apart a little bit by Hispaniola, and then gets back out maybe further towards the other side of the Bahamas, and that's just given current observations. Obviously, things will change, but the AI model might be onto something here with that general thinking. And then with that thinking, what the model does, again, kind of keeps it suppressed over there as the other storm takes hold and becomes something. But eventually, it gets actually the other system, the one further out to sea, to make landfall in North Carolina by about 7 or 8 days from now. Then the one behind it to develop and get awfully close as well. So, maybe I don't buy the fact that it ends up the way it does, but I think starting out, it might be onto something with the system being a little bit closer to Cuba and the Bahamas. Will be a trend at least to watch here in the data. The Icon German model, what does it show? Well, we'll just kind of move it ahead into time, and pretty similar, but keeps both waves out to sea. So what can we summarize here? Well, almost every model develops at least one of these storms, many of them having a landfalling system into the southeast coastline, and others that don't still have a big hurricane, or at least a strong one not far from the southeast coastline. So a lot to iron out here. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the ingredients in the models that kind of may help us decipher why they show what they're showing. If you know me at all, you know I love an upper level map. So let's get right into the fun stuff here on the European model. Kind of just old reliable to use, honestly, when looking at upper level environments, generally speaking. Now, not all the time, but most of the time. All right, here's the story. It's partially the upper level map and why things have trended maybe a little bit stronger overnight. We've got a lot of upper level spreading out of winds here, meaning we've got upper level divergence. And just notice here how all of these arrows are kind of pointing not entirely away from each other, but either way, you notice kind of this pocket in here of lesser wind shear. That's exactly where both of these systems are going to be tracking right over, which likely helps them to develop. Now, eventually could run into shear, but again, you get the idea here by the weekend. We've got these upper level anticyclones. It's meaning it's kind of throwing flow apart here, or diverging it. That divergence spreads things out in the upper levels, and that increases kind of the ventilation of these storms, and also helps to sometimes increase surface convergence, which increases rising motion, lowers the pressure of the storms, and almost a positive feedback loop in a way. Moisture content wise as well, you could see this part of the Atlantic's a lot more moist than maybe the MDR. You could see we've got pockets of moisture out here. Now, not perfect. There is some dry air nearby, but relatively moist field here by this weekend, showing up on the European model and trying to maintain itself, which tries to get these storms to develop out here. You could see that, like I said, some dry air around, but enough moisture that these systems are able to kind of try to get themselves together. But either way, still a difficult forecast to say the least. And because it's difficult, let's take a look at another thing I love to look at, which are ensembles. And this is another thing that has upticked with the potential for development since we last talked yesterday. All right, here we go. This is the latest European ensemble data and a significant uptick from yesterday. It's hard to see here, but there are kind of two separate waves. I'll try to circle them. I'll circle the one that's a little bit further out here with a black envelope, and then we'll use, let's see, how about we use orange for the one that's a little bit closer. So again, it's messy here, but you get the kind of idea of two separate waves. And the one that's closer to the United States has seen a pretty significant uptick in overnight model data here on the European ensembles. And the color of the lines indicate the strength. The brighter the colors, the more pinkish and reddish and orangish the colors are, the higher intensity that this system could be. Again, most of them with the out to sea storm, keep that one relatively strong. It's a mixed bag with the one closer to home. Some keep it weak, some keep it quite strong, getting up near hurricane status. So it's not out of the question, but either way, you see a lot of these lines going right into North Carolina and South Carolina. So something we need to watch here over the coming days. The GFS ensemble is not nearly as excited and kind of just a big old blob of energy out here. I think the GFS is really trying to merge these waves into one instead of having two separate waves. So that is also a possibility, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see, but not as scary looking on the GFS. Let me show you one more. This is some of our AI model data. What does it show? Unfortunately, the AI model is all in really on a hurricane right off the Florida Carolina coastline and working up that direction. Now, again, I show you this with caution, and I'll say not every model shows this. In fact, this is in the minority right now. This is probably about 10 to 20% of all the model output and what it's suggesting right now. But yeah, you don't want to see this many colorful lines working right into the southeast, especially this time of year. We know late September and early October is kind of prime hurricane season in the Carolinas, it feels like. This is the same time frame we've had Helene and Hugo and plenty of other big name storms is in that second half of September. So not to say this will be that by any means, obviously, but it's a time that you're climatologically, you want to pay a little closer attention to. And the AI model data, which has yet to prove itself completely right or wrong. It hits sometimes and misses others, all in on a hurricane here close to the southeast coast. So a lot to monitor there. The tropics definitely heating up. I'd say this is the most noteworthy time period we've had probably this season in terms of U.S. impacts at least, and something we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on. All right, let's go ahead and bring things on back home where we do have the threat for some severe weather and some much needed rainfall over the coming days. Speaking of upper level maps, here's the European 500 millibar vorticity map showing where we have that spin about halfway up in the atmosphere and where we have lift and sinking motion because of it. So we've got this big trough basically this afternoon that is parked right over the Rockies, and that's going to lead to a classic Colorado low setup. Basically what happens is you've got all of this vorticity over the Rockies, and because the Rockies are so tall, it gets scrunched up here, and then as it starts to move off the Rockies, it gets less scrunched up and starts to stretch, and as vorticity stretches as it comes down the mountainside, it helps it to really spin up and oftentimes creates a classic Colorado low, and that's exactly what we're going to see over the coming days. Now, it's not the only piece of energy out there. We've also got some troughing up into the Midwest, helping to create some stormy action. We've actually had a couple tornado warnings yesterday into Kentucky and Ohio because of that one. As we move this ahead, all this is going to kind of congeal into one piece by Thursday. Here's Thursday afternoon, meaning 2 days from now. Again, kind of one big old trough. It's going to help to fuel some storms at the surface and continue that low pressure's journey across the United States and eventually getting up into the Northeast. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Whenever I said the look on the map, whether we get a strong tropical storm or not, could be problematic. Here's the latest European model. It's got this kind of cutoff low here over the southeast. And unfortunately, on the right-hand side of this, right into here, got a lot of upper level divergence, which helps to create lift. And that in itself would probably bring rainfall. And then you see this little area spin down here. If that gets pulled up into it, that's a recipe for flooding. So we need to watch that very carefully. And it's a sign of one of those precursor events where you get rain before a tropical system. Again, not to say that'll happen, but we need to continue to watch the model data here and current observations and see how things unfold. But a bit of a concerning look there on that model. All right, European model at the surface. What does it look like? Well, as I said, here's that Colorado low developing. Well, maybe more of a Kansas, Oklahoma low, but originating from Colorado, right? And bringing some pretty good rain today over portions of the plains, bringing some mountain snow to the front range of Colorado. I know folks out there who love ski season are excited to hear that one. And then crossing the Ohio Valley, bringing showers and storm activity, including some severe weather potential, which I'll show you next. And then by Thursday afternoon and morning here, getting up into the Northeast, getting into the Mid-Atlantic with some shower and storm activity. And then you could see there on the European, like I said, with that precursor event, Here's the actual storm system way down here near the Bahamas, but see all that rain anyway in the Carolinas? Yeah, something we need to watch very carefully here on the model data. All right, what about the severe weather threat? Well, today we're watching the areas here in yellow and green, and again, could see a couple isolated tornadoes, especially in the Oklahoma and Arkansas this afternoon and evening. So watching that very carefully out that way. And then by the time we get on into tomorrow for your Wednesday, you can see that front take place really, and there's the warm sector where we could see a couple strong storms, damaging winds, and a couple tornadoes. The main threats, maybe a little bit of hail, but I really think strong straight line winds and isolated tornadoes is going to be the big thing here in that darker green tomorrow from the Ohio Valley all the way down to the Gulf of Texas. And or the Gulf Coast there, I should say, in Texas, maybe not the Gulf of Texas, but and then by the time we get 3 days out from now, this being Thursday, you can see the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, and down even into portions of Dixie Alley starting to get in on that severe weather threat. Not expecting an outbreak or anything, but it's been a while since we've had East Coast severe weather, so don't let it catch you off guard. More importantly, rainfall on the way, and it's much needed. Now, again, we'll see how the weekend evolves. We don't want too much rain, but for most of us, we'll take it. We're actually entering a little bit of a drought here. So from the Northeast all the way back down into the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, and portions of the Mid-Atlantic, yeah, looking like some pretty good rainfall here over the next 5 days or so, maybe even more than that, again, in that 7-day range, depending on what happens down off the southeast coastline. All right, folks. Well, that's all I've got for you here for Tuesday. I'll be back obviously tomorrow with another video, and then we'll keep it going all week long. But a lot to track here and a lot to iron out with these potential storms. Humberto is the next name on the list, so we'll see if we get that. And then I'll have to check which the next name is after Humberto, but I'll check and find out. But either way, yeah, we're watching the tropics. All right, y'all have a great one. Stay safe out there. I'll see you all tomorrow.